We haven't seen anything like this since the invention of the internet. Enormous power of a new, excited, energized workforce, and we have this new technology, AI, that I think can create unprecedented technology.
The entire services industry is at the cusp of huge transformation.
It's a boon, but really the important question is, who's going to benefit the most from it?
Hey everyone, welcome to another NTLF conversation. And I know a few of you have been pinging me to say why such a long gap. I'm terribly sorry for that. But if you are living in India, you will know how crazy our world is. There are things changing every single day, and it's good crazy. There's just so much happening. So, yes, my bad. We couldn't do this earlier, but we are back, and we are back with a bang because today I have a very, very interesting guest with me. Thrilled to welcome Thomas Dohmke, CEO of GitHub. Thomas lives and breathes the company's mission of making GitHub the home for all developers. And you will soon hear from him and you will know why I'm saying that. So, Thomas, a warm welcome. And I'm so excited to have this conversation with you.
Yeah, hello everybody, and thank you so much for having me, Debjani.
Thank you. So, Thomas, I want to start at the very beginning. First of all, I just love that in all your interviews, you always introduce yourself as a developer. I know that's for a techie, that is amazing. That's just such a wonderful thing. And you've had a very, very interesting journey, from growing up in East Berlin. Um, you have described yourself as a completely nerdy kid who absolutely loved computer games and coding. And then something very little known, which is the hockey AI experience, and then getting into Microsoft, and now, of course, CEO GitHub. It's a very fascinating journey that you have been on. So would love to start there if you want to share a little bit of how it all happened for you and the road to Silicon Valley and of course to GitHub.
Yeah, I was born in the late 70s, and back then Germany was a country divided into two halves, and Berlin was actually divided as well, and there was a wall in the middle. So I was born on the east side, and as a kid in the 80s, I couldn't just go into a store or buy a computer. That was just wasn't possible. And I think in late 80s, a friend of mine and I discovered that in the geography lab in school, there were two computers, East German manufacturer, and so we started coding on these. They still had a cassette tape, and very similar, to computers in the West. You would use BASIC to load applications and whatnot. And so I started coding in school and went to computer club every week, and then finally the wall fell in 1989. In the early 90s, I had saved up enough of my allowance to buy myself a Commodore 64, and finally had a computer for my own. But it's easy to forget now that back then there was no internet, and there wasn't a community where you could go to a forum. You couldn't just download an open source project. And so I learned it all the hard way with books, with magazines, computer club, and often the frustration of the evening converted into the solution in the morning. And so yeah, this passion, kind of this idea behind many programmers, when they work on something, they really become problem solvers. Often it's their own problems that we have created in code that we then solve. That passion for software development, that guided me through my whole professional career. I studied computer engineering in Berlin, then moved down to Southwest Germany, to Stuttgart, to work for, back then, Daimler Chrysler, today Mercedes, and built my own startup called Hockey App during the mobile boom era. And finally made it to Seattle to work for Microsoft, and that Microsoft journey then brought me into GitHub, where I've been now the CEO for a little bit over 2 years. And it's really, I think, the most amazing job to be a software developer and build tools for all the software developers out there so they can realize their dreams.
Amen. Amen. And we'll talk a little bit about that, but I have to ask you this question. Why on earth did the geography lab have computers of all places?
I don't know. I think that probably there was just space in that lab, and it's, was one of these wall cabinets, and you could open them. And remember, computers back then didn't come with a fancy screen. You had to have a TV, so you had had to have enough depth for the big screen TV. Well, big screen, a big I don't know what to call this in English. The big piece that actually created the pixels.
We all remember. At least I remember that.
Yeah.
Now, fascinating. So, Thomas, let's talk a little bit about the development community and the role it's playing in this unfolding AI narrative. Right now, this is a narrative, or this is it's actually you know, we Indians like to call it a drama because there's just so much happening. There's so many ups, there's so many downs. It's just, and it's all playing out in our lifetime and in front of us. And a lot of people say, you have a front row seat. I actually think you're one of the main characters in the drama. It's not just a front row seat. So how do you see this? I mean, what is your perspective or worldview of AI and how it's all playing out? There is a lot of, I was just at Davos 2 weeks back, so there was a lot of discussion of what's hype and what's real, right? So how are you seeing give us your worldview of artificial intelligence?
I think AI, is totally real in the sense of we haven't seen anything like this since the invention of the internet browser in 1993. First there was Mosaic, and then soon after Netscape, and all of a sudden our eyes opened and the world of software completely changed through AOL, through getting a modem into our houses. We could connect to other developers, and that's what really became the birthstone of the open source community. That created so much software around this world, really, through millions of developers in all countries, in Germany, here in the United States, or in India, working together. And it made, this evolution of software that we have seen over the last 20 years possible. But now with AI, I actually think we see something that's similar to the Industrial Revolution, where this completely changes the way that we are working. And if you look at just the early productivity gains from GitHub Copilot, they are undeniable. We see developers being 30, 40, 50% faster in writing code. And, this is fantastic because we have so much work to do as software developers. And I haven't met a single software developer or a single, CEO or CTO of a software company like Infosys over in India that doesn't have a million ideas of all the things that they could build, right? We never run out of ideas in software. Our backlogs are endless. And then on the flip side, we have all this legacy code, all the, technical debt, everything that we wrote 10 years ago is old. And often developers hate the code from last year, right? And so we have to clean all that up, and we have to fix all the security issues, and we have to update all those open source libraries, and we have to adopt to the latest device like the Apple Vision Pro now. And so we have all that work constantly, and we need to get more productive because we're sitting on this ever-growing amount of software. And so the productivity gains are undeniable, but also, developers are telling us they're actually happier using Copilot. They're more fulfilled. They're less stressed in doing their work. And so it's, it's a boon, but really the important question is, who's going to benefit the most from it? And how are countries, how are societies adopting to this change? Who will win, if you will, in this race of AI? And I obviously want, that everybody around the world, all the developers have similar gains, but we need to work on this. Every country needs to work on this to make sure that they are really sitting on the right side of the what we call the productivity polarity, right? Those that will use AI will be so much more productive, will be able to up-level so much faster, if you want to use a computer game metaphor.
I'm so glad, and I so resonate with you, Thomas, on the key promise of AI has to be productivity. And I think that's what we really have to now start focusing on, laser sharp focus on, is how do we unlock that productivity potential of AI? You're talking about the developer community, but then, it goes beyond manufacturing, agriculture, everywhere, that layer of productivity. We have to figure out how to integrate it into processes and unlock it. But coming back to the software development community, I think we get so carried away by the tools, we forget the people behind the tools, and we forget that there are millions and millions, maybe billions of software developers who are actually creating all this magic for us, right? What are some of the key trends or changes that you are seeing in the software development community that excites you and maybe also worries you the most?
Yeah, I think the generative AI movement certainly excites us with GitHub Copilot, and in fact, you mentioned it that, we wanted to meet the developers where they are. We didn't build, a new tool that we inserted into their process and all of a sudden they had to do things differently than they were doing before. Instead, we met them while writing code. The original Copilot is that developers write code in their editor. And that's, I think, what most developers love doing most, is writing something to create something in a programming language. And then Copilot predicts the next word, maybe the next line. Often, it predicts a thought that you had when you write a comment. And then it can also write multiple lines of code, sometimes, 10, 15, even 20 lines of code. And it doesn't really matter whether that code is perfect in that moment. It often gives you this idea of what you could do next, what you might want to do next. And if you don't like it, well, cool, just keep typing and it changes, the suggestion based on what you typed. It's similar to when you change your prompt in ChatGPT. So I think that's number one. It's really important for this generative AI stuff to meet the customer, the user, where they are in their current flow. And, some of the AI that we have in our lives have perfectionized that, the photo app on your phone identifies faces without you even calling this AI. It's just the magical feature there, predicting the next word on your keyboard. Your credit card issuer probably uses some kind of AI-based fraud protection, and you wouldn't want a credit card without that fraud protection, because then you have all this hassle if somebody buys a coffee maker in the middle of the night that looks great, but that isn't going to be shipped to you. So I think that's number two. It needs to be really unobtrusive and useful. It needs to be part of our lives and make our lives a little bit better. And then what we see as the third thing in software development is that there's now so many developers working on application of generative AI in a way, building their own Copilot. And of course, at Microsoft, we have built now many Copilots in Outlook and in Word and PowerPoint. And I can't tell you how often Outlook Copilot has already corrected one of my English errors when I was writing something. I'm like, how many O's and U's are in continuity? And there's all these complicated words that really helps me, and helps many humans around the world to get a little bit more creative while not worrying too much about making little mistakes.
Amen. And I love how Copilot is now becoming almost a generic word, right? Everyone's talking about the need for. So I think NVIDIA recently talked about, you have to ensure that at the development layer itself, every developer is also a security expert. And it's impossible to upskill so many people at the same time. So the best way to do it is give them a Copilot that acts as a security, which I thought was such a brilliant idea, right? But I'll go back to the GitHub Copilot where it all started. When you guys were working on the Copilot and you were piloting it and seeing the kind of response, did you at that point know what you were creating and how it was going to revolutionize not just software development but industries? Like the entire services industry is at the cusp of huge transformation.
I like how you said we are piloting it. We were piloting, the enterprise into the undiscovered land, trying to see what we could find, what planets and races we can find on this other part of the galaxy. No, it all started for us in June of 2020. On the height of the first stage of the Corona crisis, that we were all in lockdown, and we got early access to GPT-3 back then. So that's the previous model. Now we're all talking about GPT-4 for the last year, and we jumped on a call, and somebody had the keyboard and access to GPT-3. And the others were just telling, that person what to do. And it was like type and ask it to write a method in Python or a function in JavaScript. And to our surprise, it actually did that to a degree where we're like, wow, this actually knows the difference between Python and JavaScript, and it can write correct code. And so we're like, okay, maybe we can use this to make our own software development process a little bit better. And we ask our most senior engineers to submit some programming exercises to us, like things we would use in an interview loop when we hire newer engineers. And I submitted 233 or so exercises. And back then, in 2020, now almost 4 years ago, the model was already able to solve 93% of these programming exercises. And that was the light bulb moment, if you will, for us. Okay, we have here something that can write code. Now, how can we integrate that into the developer workflow? And I think, this is what really made Copilot so special, that in 2020, we started working on this. In 2021, we launched a preview. And of course, there were many skeptical developers. Many of my friends, in the community were like, this can't really work. And I'm like, yeah, I thought the same thing when we first saw it. And within a few months, we got a lot of feedback. We're like, oh my God, I wish I would have started using it earlier. It's really magical. And then in mid 2022, we shipped the final product, the V1, to customers. And this was even before ChatGPT came out. And so we had this phenomenal moment when ChatGPT came, and all of a sudden the skepticism went away from many of our customers, and the conversation shifted into, Thomas, tell me more about Copilot. Tell me how my developers can use it, and how can I learn from your adoption of generative AI?
As a very, very amateur coder who codes only for fun, I have to say where they have helped me the most is figuring out, where did I make the mistake? Where did I leave something out of,
Yeah.
a simple colon can make such a big difference. So I think that's where it's really helped me. But this is fascinating. And I the skeptics continue, the voice of the skeptic. And I won't say skeptics. I think there are always two groups of thoughts, which is fair. But there is a growing concern that, in the future, the co-pilots will become the pilots, and you may not need human developers anymore. Do you subscribe to that, or what's your thinking on that?
The technology that we use today, large language models and other machine learning models, is not sentient, and as such, it's not creative. It needs a pilot to tell it what to do, what code to write, even in what direction to go. And if you think about the job of a software developer in many large companies today, it is about writing code and the skills that they have learned in that journey of becoming a better developer. In a similar way, like becoming a better artist or a better writer or a better musician, you have to learn and practice and do it all over again. But many developers are also systems thinkers, and they make a lot of large-scale decisions. And there's a lot of differences between software running in the cloud versus running on your laptop versus running on your phone versus running, on the point of sale system in the supermarket also, right? And so the developer has to make a lot of creative decisions, how to design the product, how to take, feature requests from their president or the CTO and break it down into small building blocks. And then once they have reached the smallest size, whether they know, okay, now AI can help me to generate that code. And maybe those building blocks will grow over time, and developers will be able to write whole subsystems with AI. Maybe AI will be to a certain degree embedded into the user interface of the software. I can totally see that happening, but I think there's way too many decisions that developers will have to make going forward. And there's way too much code that has already been written, billions of lines of code. Some customers of ours and many companies around the world are still running code that dates back all the way to the 1960s and 1970s, written in languages like COBOL, BASIC, Pascal, or C and C++ is very, very prevalent still in the embedded space. And so we need developers to manage all that code, to transform that code into the future, to find bugs, as you say, to the next generation, when they onboard into a company, the new employees, to describe what does that code do actually, and how can I use this. And I think it will really help developers to thrive, to focus on the things they love doing and spend less time on the things that all drag us down in our day-to-day.
I cannot agree more with you. I think we underestimate the importance of humans in the AI playbook and narrative. So so young people should continue to learn how to code. If nothing else, they should learn how to code, because I think,
Yeah.
as you said, it teaches you the ultimate problem solving skills. On that note, a quick question to you: what's your favorite coding language?
I mean, I love coding in Ruby, which is a language which you can use to write web applications. And then I also like pretty much Swift. I love building little iPhone apps because I can carry them with me in my pocket on my phone. So it's still those two languages, Swift and Ruby, that I really enjoy working with. But there's many others out there. With my kids, I often work in Python. That's what they learn in school. And you mentioned earlier that Copilot helps you to find little commas. I've seen that with my kids as well. They used to come into my office and push their laptop in front of my computer and then say, here, can you find the bug? And I'm like, why don't you ask Copilot and see if it can find the bug for you and even explain it to you. And they're like, oh, this is great, because now I no longer have to see if daddy is patient to do his real job, and then also the sideshow coder help the pair programmer for my kids. And I think that's going to be a really true democratizing moment for software development, that kids no longer need a parent at home that has technical skills or technical background. They no longer need a teacher that always runs out of time. No teacher has time to tutor every single kid in class, and we all have these anxieties in our heads that when we raise our hand too often and ask a stupid question, that our co-students and the teacher look at us, Thomas, with another one of those. Right now I can just go to Copilot and ask that question, or to ChatGPT and all the other AI agents, and really explore any topic that comes to my mind and figure out what has the model to say about this, and where can I read more, and how can I become an explorer of this infinite world of knowledge that is in the internet.
Beautifully said, Thomas. Um, just changing tracks a little bit. There's a lot of concern, growing concern about the risks of AI, and a lot of it is not unfounded. I
Yeah.
mean, we see examples every single day, from deep fakes to whatever, right? There are definitely causes for concern. But I strongly believe that everyone talks about, aligning the technology with human values. I still believe we have a lot of work left to align humans with human values. And if we can do that, then the technology will absolutely not be a problem. But that said and done, the development community, of course, plays a very key role. They are the frontline soldiers. That's where it all starts, in ensuring that we are building safe AI. And any thoughts on what are the steps being taken, or what needs to change to ensure we make safety a priority from step one?
I think responsible AI is crucial part of developing large language models themselves, and then the products that sit on top of these models. And you have heard a lot about model alignment and making sure that the model is fair and treats people equally, that it respects our privacy, security, compliance. And many of these things are actually very similar to software that we use. Software needs to get tested before it gets shipped to the user, but then that testing and that bug fixing really never stops. And there's an endless iteration, finding new things. And I think in some ways it's great, because these models speak natural language, and they speak English and German and Hindi and all these other languages, so we can actually validate the responses quite easily. The bugs in many ways are less hidden than they are in real software, and you saw that, or you see that, when every time a new model comes out, there's somewhere in the internet that finds the weakness in that model, and then often the model makers, the AI companies, are very quick in adopting their responsible AI mechanism. So I think responsible AI and responsible AI testing of both the product and the model are crucial. And we have been, we have been at Microsoft really committed to this over the last decade, and we have learned a lot from mistakes in the past, and we're still learning a lot every day. Satya Nadella, our CEO, calls this the learn it all culture, as opposed to the know it all culture. We left that know it all culture behind when Satya became the CEO, and now we're learning every day, and together with these models of building secure AI products. I think the other piece, if we bring it back to software development, right, is that our product, GitHub Copilot, is used to write code. And many developers write code every day, and we know that no human is perfect. They all make mistakes when they write code. They have little bugs in them, and and sometimes you might introduce something that is just looks like a user error, and sometimes it's something more severe, like a security vulnerability that's then used by an attacker or even by a nation state actor to go into the system and steal data. And that's the worst possible outcome for software, because in that moment, as any company, CEO or president, you're now forced to not only fix that issue while your product is out there in production, but you also have to communicate that to your users, to your customers. Yeah. You have to tell them that you lost their data, and that what that means is that you lost their trust, and it will take time to rebuild that trust, because now you lost it once. It's much harder to lose the trust than to rebuild that trust, right? So we need to do everything we can to build more secure, less error-prone software. And I think AI is going to be a crucial part of this, because as we talked earlier, it removes some of the burden of writing software. It removes a lot of the repetitive tasks, but it also learns from past mistakes. In fact, Copilot has built in security scanning, so it scans the suggestion from the model with a smaller model and sees if there's a known vulnerability in it, like a SQL injection is one such example. Very, very common, easy to make mistake if you don't pay attention when you're writing code. And it can filter that SQL injection, so the code that's suggested by the model is actually more secure than the average code that a developer might write. And then you can learn more about the security vulnerability. You can have it explain it, you can have it fix it. And so as a developer, together with your Copilot, you write better code by working, learning and exploring these topics together.
I agree. Love how you put it. And, I think that's one of the reasons I'm a huge fan of GitHub, because you're like the ultimate open source platform. You bring together the entire ecosystem, and there's so much learning that can happen in terms of sharing of best practices, worst practices, mistakes, etc. I think that's fantastic. But I know we are running out of time, but I have to ask you this question, Thomas, your thoughts on India. What excites you about India, and your plans as far as India is concerned?
I'm coming, and I'm so excited. We're planning a trip in March. I've been to India before. My first trip was actually back in 2008, so a long time ago. A lot of things have changed all around the country. But this will be my first time as GitHub CEO, and so I'm really excited. India, I remember India from previous trips as fantastic energy, a great startup ecosystem. So
this
much
is the land of software development, Thomas. Don't forget.
So much software developers. And in fact, we published last year as part of our yearly Octoverse that we believe that in 2027, India will be the largest community of open source developers on GitHub. And I think that is so exciting. And so I want to meet with developers. I want to meet with startups. I want to see where India is going. And all the while, this AI revolution is happening. And so you have this enormous power of a new, excited, energized workforce. And we have this new technology, AI, that I think, can create unprecedented technology in India, maybe significant GDP growth. I don't know yet, but I hope, and we have shown studies that might happen. And I hope I take a lot of learnings from Indian developers from this trip, and I can't wait to come.
There's so much happening, is all I will say. There's just so much happening, and it's been wonderful talking to you, Thomas. We ran out of time. I had a few more questions, but I look forward to meeting you if possible when you are here in March. I'm sure our paths will cross. But thank you so much for taking the time, and thank you for everything you do. I think you help build a very strong community that is so crucial to ensuring we get AI right. So thanks a ton, and thank you for taking the time to talk to us.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was my pleasure, and I can't wait to meet you and everybody in India in person in March.
Thank you. Look forward.
For more content on tech and leadership, subscribe to Nasscom YouTube channel and press the bell icon to never miss an update.